being here, this Founders Vijay. Please, I'd like to invite you to come to the stage and share with us some of the wisdom and the stories that you've gained over the years. I know that we would love to hear your observations about the school as well, about the people you've met and what you think we could be doing to turn this sublimation of war into something that's life-affirming, body and mind-affirming, and brings back all the connection that we love about sport. Vijay, thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot believe I'm at Doon School. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But this is a very special place. I got a chance to spend a couple of days here now, and whatever anyone has said to me about Doon School doesn't match up to what I've seen. Quite special. The environment, of course, talking to the faculty, the students, the entire ambience of this place makes you really want to study, doesn't it? Well, they say the past is history and the future is a mystery. That's why the present is a gift. And being here at Doon School is truly a gift. First and foremost, thank you to Sunil Munjal, the Board of Governors, Headmaster Paget, my dear friend Sanjeev Kasal, batch of 74. Stop beating me at tennis and I'll keep talking to you. Sport, for me, was my life. Sport, for me, has been my greatest education. It has taught me more about the world. It has taught me more about myself. It has taught me more about life. It has taught me more about people. It has taught me more about religion, ethnicities, travel, language, barriers on and off court. It has given me my greatest education. And it started under the most trying of circumstances. I'm in the middle of three brothers, one older, one younger, from the city of Chennai in the southern part of India. My older brother was 18 months older to me, born strong, healthy, genius in school, played chess extremely well. At 7 years old, he became the one child who drew with the Russian grandmaster in chess. So that's how good he was. But my parents wanted him to play an outdoor sport because he was spending too much time inside beating the computer. So tennis being the sport of choice for my parents, he started playing tennis. Healthy, strong, got into it very quickly, came first in class all the time. Memory was incredible. He could look at a page and tell you the page. And then I came along. In many cases, in many ways, just the opposite. I was unhealthy as a child. I grew up with some illnesses. My lungs were too close together, apparently, when I was born, so I could only breathe at about 25% capacity. I couldn't have good retention. I couldn't study well. My mother did my homework for me. I didn't go to class very often because I was ill. I spent a lot of time in and out of hospital. I had many hours of IV in me every day. My mother used to go sit in school and take notes and come and teach me in the hospital, beg the teachers, allow him to do the exam, which I rarely passed. And so this was my early life. On the other hand, my older brother came first in class. If he came second, the house was a morgue. If I passed, my mother handed out sweets to everyone. Finally, the doctor said, you've got to get this boy to play an outdoor sport so the lungs can expand and he can go to school. So once again, tennis being the sport of choice in my home, started playing tennis, played for a minute, sit for 2 minutes, played for 2 minutes, sit for 5 minutes to get started. And very quickly, I was running 50 yards, 100 yards, 200 yards. My mother would drive the car by the side of me, and eventually ran 5 miles up and 5 miles down. Just through the persistence, the effort, the patience, the hard work, compassion, and loving attributes of my parents. Nothing else. To this day, I've always said my greatest talent was being born to the right parents. So I started playing tennis, and for whatever reason, I started getting good at a fairly young age. And all my neighbors and friends of my parents and all our friends started to wonder, what was this family doing? Playing tennis. Constantly we were asked the question, yes, you play tennis, what do you do for a living? So obviously, we couldn't answer the question at the time, but when I won my first major tournament, much later on in life, I ended up getting a prize money check that was more than most people make in a year. So that question stopped coming. But the second question was more difficult to answer, which was always posed to me by my grandmother, my late grandmother, who used to say to me, why do you have to go so far to lose? And frankly, to this day, I've not been able to answer that one. My days in hospital, I always remember because my mother and father would sit next to me, dad after work, mother doing her work and coming back and looking after me with IV in me and explaining to me that I was going to be the best tennis player in this country. A bizarre notion, outlandish dream. It was something that I couldn't possibly fathom. And she and my tennis coach at the time said that they were going to be able to make me come out of my illness, make me participate in events that you only dream about being in, make me travel around the world so I can be the best I could possibly be. Indians around the world were going to come and watch me play and cheer me on. And then she had the first of 2 near-fatal accidents. So I was about 9 years old when, at the time, kerosene stoves were a big thing at home for cooking. The kerosene stove fell on her, the sari caught fire, and she burned to the ceiling. She was in her 30s. So burned from the neck down, 9 months in hospital, early 60s. Skin grafting was done, not perfected at that time. Every time she had to go into hospital for change of dressing, every time she came out of the hospital, she was making sure that the tennis coach was paid, which was her first thought. That she was going to survive, she was going to make it work because she had made a promise to me. So she went on to recover to as much as possible from that horrible, horrible tragedy, and started a small industry to pay for my tennis, because at the time, Dad's salary was not good enough. 4 years later, she was explaining to one of the staff in the office about one of the machines that had 32 blades in it, and her right hand got stuck in it. So from the right hand, from the wrist down, the hand was severed. So they picked it piece by piece, and in a 9.5-hour surgery, again in the late 60s, put the hand back together again and said, you will not be able to write, you will not be able to eat, and you will not be able to drive. And so she did all three so I could play. In my house, the saying often was, impossible is nothing. It was never can't, it was only won't. The word can't didn't exist. She had a little saying from Longfellow pasted above our bedroom door way back when, and I'm sure you all know the saying, that she repeated to us constantly, and I thought she actually did the saying, not Longfellow. Heights by great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, for they, while their companions slept, were toiling upwards in the night. It was a very famous saying that drove us in the early stages of our life to play the sport that we didn't know anything about. Tournaments were far away. This part of the country was far away. It was too cold for people like us from Chennai to come up this far. And London and Wimbledon was a distant dream. Didn't exist for us. But they said that I will play there. My brother will play there. And we will play there. And we will represent the country in Davis Cup. And so we worked together with my mother pushing us every step of the way and getting us to a point where we ended up becoming the number 1 and 2 in this great country of ours. The greatest gift of all was playing Davis Cup for India. Nothing better to stand in India or in a foreign land against another nation and see a tricolor flying and the anthem being played, because you're there to represent 1 billion Indians in a foreign land. Nothing comes close to that. Indian sports during the time that we were playing was not of paramount importance to the country. Culture for us as society changes very gradually and very slowly. We grew up with an adage from the International Olympic Committee. The great Avery Brundage, the president of the IOC at that time, said, "It's not the winning that counts, but the taking part." And we in India took part in everything. But the great football coach of the New England Packers, American football team, the great Vince Lombardi, said, "Winning isn't everything, it's the only thing." There was no room for second best, especially in our sport, which is an individual sport. It's very clear winning and losing. There are no contradictions here. There are no excuses. It's just you and your opponent. And if there's a problem, you have to fix it all on your own, by yourself, under the most difficult of circumstances. Thousands of people watching you on site millions watching on television, and you've got to fix it. You can have all kinds of people in the box above you, in your player's box, coaches, trainers, dietitians. In the case of some people, even a priest. Comes in handy. But at the end of the day, even when you see the great Roger Federer on court, he's got to fix it himself, having a problem. But you can see it from the outside. You can't see it when you're in there and in trouble. But it was a very, very special learning curve. It's pressure that you feel every moment of the way. And then you learn from your defeats. You learn from your failures. Every single time you have a loss to some individual, you say to yourself, I will not lose to that guy again. And the only thing you can do to avoid that is to work just that little bit harder. There's a great saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. Which is true. Because in sport, there's no sense of being perfect. You're just getting better every single day. It teaches you more about yourself than anything else because it brings out the character in you. It brings out your feelings. It brings out your positions when things get very difficult and you don't know how to handle it and how you behave. And for me, irrespective of where I was in the world, from Stockholm to Sydney, from Tokyo to Tashkent, from Bombay to Boston, it didn't matter where I was because one thing I did know every single time I got to the court was that I was Indian. And it always made me feel special. I had a very fruitful and long career, 22 years, Davis Cup for 20 years, played numerous Wimbledons and the US Opens and every other major tournaments around the world. It took me to places I never thought I would go, and Mom was right again. Indians came out around the world to watch me playing. If it wasn't for the support that I got in this country, amongst all the Indian support in the 70s and 80s and all the way through, to all of the Indian diaspora who lived across the world in different corners of the world, who came out every time they saw me playing, just to be able to cheer me on. And the loudest voice in the audience was always the Indian. It was truly a feeling that could never, ever be replaced. So post my tennis career, after 22 wonderful years, numerous injuries and comebacks and so on and so forth, squeezed out the last ounce of playing tennis that I could possibly get out of my tennis career. Television beckoned to become a presenter and a commentator on television. For at the time it was called Prime Sports. Gave me a chance to get into a medium that I had no clue about. Didn't know what television was all about. What am I going to say to all these people? Live on TV, millions of viewers, and someone talking in your ear the whole time. The producer's talking in your ear and you're talking to millions of people at the same time. And it's live. So it's not like doing a film where you can do a retake. But I enjoyed it so very much because I was corrected time and again by the public who would send us emails and tell us, oh, you made this mistake, or you made that mistake. And once again, those made me better at what I really wanted to do. Family of 4, 2 people might be interested in tennis and 2 might not be. I tried to engage the 2 who are interested in tennis and keep them engaged. And the 2 who are not interested in tennis, can I bring them in? Even if they were not interested in tennis. So we tried to give them a little bit more than what tennis truly warranted. And it taught me a lot about live television and live sport on television and what the audience wanted. Another incredible bit of education that I was able to take with me. Then came, incredibly, off the center court at Wimbledon, the opportunity to do a film. And I thought he was joking. I had tea with the producer of the Bond pictures, and he said, we've looked at a lot of actors and we'd like to consider you to do a screen test. And I said, for what? And he said, for the film. So the only reason I accepted to do the screen test for this picture was because who could say they worked at Pinewood Studios in the morning and played at Wimbledon in the afternoon? So after the Bond movie, Octopussy, and then I went on to do Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. I went on to do a couple of other television series in the US, again, being the first one to have my own show on American television and so on and so forth. Finally, people said to me, why aren't you doing any more? And I said, well, they killed me in the first two. Again, it taught me so much about what goes into making a film. And that, a major film at that. And what it takes to get 1 minute of footage up on the screen. And how many hundreds and hundreds of people are involved in it. And millions of dollars spent to be able to give us all as an audience an ability to go in there and lose ourselves for 2 to 3 hours and be completely entertained, oblivious of the rest of the world. It's a very special feeling to be able to create that from a filmmaker's perspective, and gave me a chance to understand it even more. It also led me on to do my own television talk show, which is again another unique learning curve. I'm sure many of you had seen the show Larry King Live, with a wonderful talk show host on CNN. And they gave me an opportunity to do a 10-part series to interview guests of my choice globally on a 1-hour, one-on-one show with me. So it gave me a chance to understand their lifestyle, where they grew up, what spurred them on, what drove them to excellence. And I had a wide variety of guests from different walks of life. From films, we had Michael Douglas, Pierce Brosnan, Sharon Stone, across the board. In food, a great chef in Wolfgang Puck. In fashion, we had Cindy Crawford. In boxing, we had Sugar Ray Leonard and Oscar de la Hoya. We went across the board. And I guess I could say it here, but we also had the last interview of a gentleman by the name of Hugh Hefner. He, of course, was my choice. And the other interesting interview, before he ran for president, my guest was Donald Trump. The only 1-hour, one-on-one interview he has ever done. He was very kind. He said I was a good tennis player. But the one interesting interview that jumped out at me, because I learned from each and every one of these interviews about what drove these people to excellence and what their lifestyles were all about in different walks of life. One of the very interesting interviews I did was a gentleman by the name of Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon. I went to his home. It took us 3 hours, 4 hours to set up the camera crew, and I got a chance to walk around his home and look at all the accolades on the walls, the space shuttles, Columbia, Enterprise, across the board, all the accolades he received, Presidential Medal of Honor, and a variety of others, pictures on the walls. And I'm walking around looking at everything, and I finally got to see this one little plaque on the wall in a corner that was well hidden that really caught my eye. And these are the things that I look for in people, in homes, in families, in teachers, where we're able to learn. So my entire life has always been a learning curve. To be better tomorrow than I was today. So the plaque on the wall was there. It's a very small plaque, hidden away in the corner. And I remember always growing up, all my friends used to say, parents used to always tell them, eat your vegetables, the sky's the limit. You're very talented, work hard, sky's the limit. Do this, sky's the limit. Go outside from 4 to 6 in the afternoon, sky's the limit. Everything, sky's the limit. And it rung a bell right off the bat when I saw this little plaque on the wall in Buzz Aldrin's home that who said sky's the limit when I left my footprints on the moon? Each individual has something special in him or her. We just have to find it within ourselves, to have that faith and belief in oneself that the impossible is truly nothing, that we are here in our individual and special way to make not just your life better, but the person sitting next to you, that will eventually lead you to be those leaders that this school develops and makes, not just for this country, but for the world. And I think that is what gave me a chance to be able to do all of these various things. And then I got a call from the UN to be a messenger of peace for Kofi Annan. It was a unique program that Kofi Annan had created, the late Kofi Annan, a true diplomat's diplomat from Ghana. Also, I don't know if many of you know, he was also an Olympic athlete. Kofi Annan was truly one of the greatest diplomats the world has ever seen. He picked 5 of us at the time, myself, the great Muhammad Ali, Michael Douglas, the actor, Luciano Pavarotti, the singer, and Elie Wiesel, the Holocaust survivor and Nobel laureate, to be 5 messengers of peace. We went to places I never thought I would be able to go to. Bosnia, Kosovo, northern Sri Lanka, Phuket and Aceh after the tsunami, areas of the world that I had not been to play. I had been to New York and London and Paris and Hong Kong and San Francisco, but not to these places in the world that were struck by tragedy, and you see what reality is when things like this does happen. The UN has 60 agencies outside of the Security Council that we're all not completely aware of their work. But when I went on my first trip on behalf of the UN to the western state of Gujarat to visit the earthquake-ravaged Bhuj in 2001, 48 hours after the earthquake struck, with a stench of dead bodies everywhere, and to see UNICEF on the ground, these people with a bottle of water and a cell phone, bringing this city back to life again, was overwhelming to see. It struck another incredible chord in me that has stayed with me again for the rest of my life. It was again a very special moment to have that kind of education, to see reality at its worst. And the service to others is what I was seeing on the ground, visually, and practically and logistically what they were going through to be able to do it. And the great Muhammad Ali said, "The service to others on earth is the rent we pay for a room in heaven." Times have changed. Times will continue to change. You are preparing for tomorrow. This school is preparing you for tomorrow. And let me not just say it's just for our country, because we live in a global world today. You all have the potential to be leaders of a free world in everything that you choose to do. Aim big, dream big, shoot for the stars. Nothing is impossible. When I see the way my life transpired from the time I was in a hospital bed to be playing on the center court at Wimbledon, or doing things that I never dreamt I would be a part of. It's just so over the top, I can't even imagine. I just feel that there are few elements that in whatever you do, you need to have with you. Or what I would call the 5 Ds that sort of drove me and became part of me, as it has become part of so many people who have done well in life. Successful doesn't mean success in one area. Being a success is really what you feel about yourself and how well you've performed as far as you're concerned. You're challenging yourself. So the 5 Ds that sort of drives all of us to some extent, the first and foremost is desire. If you don't have the desire to do something, don't bother, because you're never going to be good at it, irrespective of what it is, sport or anything else. The next 3 sort of go hand in hand. The discipline that it takes to make you fuel that desire. It's a great amount of discipline. For me, when I was playing, food was a problem. I loved Indian food. I love Indian food. And it was not the best thing to eat before matches. And I ate a lot of it. But that discipline had to come in at some point. The other 2, of course, again, going hand in hand, is the dedication that you show to your work, to whatever it is you're working towards, the dedication and the determination that goes with it. A dogged determination of passion, sacrifice, and a very focused approach in whatever you're doing. So once you've had that desire, the discipline, the dedication, and the determination, all of that goes with it, and you've done everything possible in your hands to be able to make you at what you're working on doing. Those are the first 4, and that is all in your command. And then you leave the 5th one out of it, because the 5th one is divine intervention. If you don't have that, it ain't going to happen. Having gone through a variety of things as part of my life, having gone through and met people I never dreamt I would meet, meeting and spending time with the 2 people of my era that were named saints by the Catholic Church, spending time with the Mother Teresa, spending time with the late Pope John Paul, spending time at the UN, at a UNGA luncheon with the great Nelson Mandela. These are people who not just give you goosebumps, but inspire you to be better every day. We all have to work hard to be better tomorrow than we were today, and give us an opportunity to enjoy the fruits of that, not just ourselves, but for generations to come. And that's exactly why you're here at this magnificent spot called Doon School. I come back to one final story, because for me, at the end of the day, Davis Cup was the be-all and end-all of it. I was at the tail end of my career, and we had beaten Russia, and we were playing Argentina in Delhi when it was quite hot, getting into the summer. The Argentinian team was much better than us. I was at the tail end of my career, so I was not even ranked by then. My dear friend, also from Chennai, Ramesh Krishnan, was ranked about 48 at the time. My brother was older than me. He keeps saying he's younger. And we were up against an Argentinian, very formidable Argentinian team. Their number one player was in the world's top 10. Their number two player was in the world's top 20. And their doubles team was one of the best 3 teams in the world. Playing them in Delhi, opening match. I was also playing captain at the time. Opening match, their number one player beats Ramesh Krishnan, the first match, long match. I come out to play the second match, a very long match, managed to squeeze out a win on the grass at Delhi. So we won match all on the opening day. Come back the next day to play the doubles, my brother and I, against the number 3 team in the world. 2 separate players. I'm the only one playing days back to back on Friday and Saturday. We play a long 5-hour match, which we end up losing. So we're 2 matches to 1 down going into the 3rd day. And I got to come out on the 3rd day to play a very fresh 21-year-old top 10 player in the world who's had the day off to keep India alive in that match. He wins the first set, 6-3. He wins the second set, 6-3. He's up 3-love in the third, love 40 on my serve. I managed to squeeze out the third set, 8-6. We go into the locker room for a 10-minute break. I'm on the trading table. The trainer is working on me. The whole team is around me. My body is burning up because it's been so hot. I've lost close to 11 pounds in weight. And the doctor says, I can't let you go out to finish the match because it could be dangerous to your health. So the manager says to me, you've done very well, India's very proud of you, let's pack up and go home. Because the future was important, not to have any permanent damage. So these moments come very rarely in one's life, where you face this crossroad. And the choice is between taking the status quo of packing up and going home to keep you good, or take that plunge into the unknown to have the potential to be great. The great Billie Jean King said, every challenge is an opportunity, and pressure is a privilege. Not all of us get it on a regular basis in front of millions of people. And so I think back to the time I was 7 years old. I think back to the time my mother would say, impossible is truly nothing, that the word can't doesn't exist. And so I said to the manager, let's have the oxygen tank close by. Let's keep the ambulance very close to the court. But the only way I'm coming off this court is on a stretcher. And so the interesting part of it all was the fact that I was down 2 match points in the 4th set. I managed to squeeze out of that, ended up winning 6-2 in the 5th, and India went to the final of the Davis Cup. The reason those experiences are important to me, but they just happen to be in sport, but it's not a sporting experience. It is a life experience. It teaches you about yourself. It teaches you about things that you can and cannot do. It teaches you about things that you need to do for others. It teaches you about where you came from. As we've often said, if you don't know where you came from, you will never know where you're going. So these things come into your mind at the moment in time of those 10 minutes when you're asked to go out there and ask more of yourself under the most trying circumstances. And when you have that kind of support, where people are edging you on to also push yourself to ask for more than you can really afford. And it's amazing what we can achieve and what we can do. And so, all I can say to each and every one of you is that have no regrets. Push yourself, because it's incredible what you can do when you do that. Take people with you along the way. Make sure that you hug your parents every night when you go home. Make sure that at the end of it all, when you're leading this country and around the world, big corporations, big television networks, so many of your past students have gone on to excel in incredible walks of life. And whichever part of the world we go in, because today we live in a global world, always remember one thing. When you're sitting either in New York or in Stockholm or in London or wherever else it might be, or in Delhi, that you will always do this for the glory of your family, for the glory of your school, and for the glory of this great country. You will always be Indian. May I just say thank you once again to Sunil, the Board of Governors, Headmaster Paget, lovely wife Lindsay, thank you. Sanjeev, my dear friend, thank you for bringing me here. You were wrong. The school exceeded all my expectations. And most importantly, to the students, a great big thank you. I loved playing tennis with you guys yesterday. Those of you who become great at tennis, when I come back later and ask for your autograph, please say yes. To all the parents here, we're very fortunate. Wonderful boys. Only thing we as parents can do is make sure we love them unconditionally, irrespective of what they end up doing. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thanks so much.